Welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Muserino, joined as always by Will Neary and Nick Newmeyer, and it is preview day. Today we are going to dive into the Texas Children's Houston Open. We'll run through DP World Tour is at the Hero Indian Open, where Akshay is actually playing in the field there. We've got LPGA Tour Ford Championship, Corn Ferry Tour Club Car Championship, and then we will talk a little bit about Chasing Sunday, the new PGA Tour NFL film style show that debuted. But first, let's start with our Texas Children's Houston Open preview. Will, what are some of the storylines heading into Thursday you're looking at?
Yeah, well, we got one of our big answers today. We're recording on Tuesday evening, and we got one of our big answers to a storyline today, and that was Scotty Scheffler withdrawing. Obviously, that was fairly well speculated. I think that he would likely withdraw. Obviously, there was reports about the expected due date of his second child. He and his wife Meredith are expecting their second child. Congratulations to them, obviously, but that seems to be coming, rumored this week in the very, very near future, which obviously, if we know Scotty Scheffler from the 2024 Masters, when was it 2024, 2023, when Bennett was born, uh, that he had his phone on the course, right, and was ready to take a call at any given moment, no matter what, and drop everything to go. Um, so obviously, we know he's not going to change his tune for the Texas Children's Houston Open,
Little
as he
better
was going to do
timing
that for
this
the
time.
Masters. Yeah, he's got a couple weeks now. He gave himself some leeway, but so he will not be in the field. He was one of, obviously, as he is in every field, but especially here, he was a favorite pretty sizably. Prior to his withdrawal, he was like plus 350 or something like that, I believe I saw, maybe a little longer than that. But he's had three T2s here in the last 4 years and a T9 in between them. So obviously was one of the guys that you would be watching this week, but he is not in the field. That's kind of the main talking point, I think. I don't know if there's a ton to take away from that. I mean, we can speculate on, what having a newborn baby can do to a golf game. Obviously, I feel like it can do one of two things. It's either like you get dad strength and you're unbeatable, or you get, dad back from carrying your kid around all hours of the night, and it's maybe a little bit of a hindrance. But either way, we'll see how that manifests in the coming week. But otherwise, it's a pretty good field. I mean, nothing crazy. Minwoo is favored, defending his title after last year's championship. Um, yeah, 19 of the top 50 in the world. Obviously, that's pretty weighted towards the back of that top 50. But now I guess it's 18 because no Scotty
18 now.
Scheffler. But
Yep. Right.
yeah, Chris Goddard, Minwoo Lee, and a lot of others are in the field. So lots to look forward to. A lot at stake still. Another one of the good events. Like we've mentioned, we're right around the corner from the Masters. So it's time to start watching that OWGR leaderboard. We talked a little bit, I think, off camera about Ricky and what he needs to do to really maybe it might have actually been on camera in our first episode of the week about what he
Definitely a
needs
mix of
to do to
both.
find his. Yeah, yeah, a little on and off. But he I believe our beloved Ricky Fowler tracker on X, who you should all go follow, mentioned that it would take, I believe, a top five, right? And if he doesn't
Right.
achieve that, a win at the Valero Texas Open next week. So there will be a lot of storylines to track now that we're coming down to that cut line for the top 50 in the Masters. I feel like those are kind of the two overarching things that we were paying attention to coming into this week. I don't know about if you guys had any others, but to me, it was really Scotty Scheffler and his potential to play here. And then obviously the several different storylines about getting that safe, qualification to the Masters coming up next week.
And honestly, in regards to Scotty, this is something that, maybe I should have known this is going on, and I'll do the hand up and realize that I had no idea that they were this close to expecting. First off, major congratulations to the Scheffler family, first and foremost. But
Honestly, I think it's okay that we don't know. I don't think we need to know the inner
I know.
workings of
for
how
sure,
I was
yeah,
this
we
I'm
can,
glad.
like,
I was glad that I didn't know.
yeah,
yeah.
honestly, same.
But I didn't even know this was potentially on the table. I didn't know a withdrawal was coming. And just seeing that news, I feel like my first thought of knowing that obviously they're this close to welcoming another child was that it kind of makes sense. Like it almost explain like, and granted, this is pure speculation at this point. I'm not he hasn't said anything to support this. There's absolutely no reason to think this, but at the same time, I almost have to wonder like if his performance earlier in the year, maybe like his mind was elsewhere, maybe he was like thinking towards his family, maybe he was preoccupied with, the addition to his family. Maybe that was somewhat impacting his game a little bit. It possibly makes sense.
You
Yeah,
never know.
definitely.
Yeah, I don't know, Kyle. Go ahead. You never know. Maybe it's
Yeah,
possible.
tough to say. I think the biggest thing as it pertains to Scotty is like I think I saw. I wish I could remember who tweeted this. They said this will be his longest layoff since he didn't play last week either, and
Oh,
I think he's
yeah.
going to have a 3 or 4 week now before the Masters, which would be his longest before a major. Um,
Interesting.
so I wonder if that's going to be a good head clearing for him. Especially since he hasn't gotten off to the start everyone thought he would. It's interesting, I guess. Something to think about.
Yeah, because you have to imagine he's most likely not playing Valero, so we're not going to see
Yeah, no
him
way.
until the Masters. So, yeah, like you mentioned, maybe this would be a good spot to, definitely probably has some, I'm not going to say new dad because he already is a dad, but probably already has some of that like build up stress coming on. Maybe it's impacting his game, maybe not, who's to say. It would be interesting to see just taking this time, maybe clearing the head and seeing what could happen at Augusta. I know everybody's going to expect him, even though he has not played his best golf, everybody expects him to come out firing at Augusta, myself included.
Yeah, he will still be the heavy favorite by quite a wide margin, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Maybe not as wide as it would have been in January or February, but he'll still be the heavy favorite.
For sure.
Yeah. I think definitely will, as you're talking about, Ricky and some of the guys who still need to play well to qualify for the Masters and other events. I saw in the media guide. So we've got players in the field between numbers 40 to 65 in the OWGR who have not qualified for the Masters right now. So that'd be the Napster, Jake Knapp at number 42,
Hmm.
Nikolai Højgaard at 47, Pierce
Yeah.
Simcoody at 51, Michael Thorbjornsen at 56, Ricky, of course, at 61, and Jordan Smith at 65. So, I mean, I think that's, probably the most intriguing part about this week and then next week as well, are people just scrambling trying to qualify, no?
Yeah, and I think now I don't know the math necessarily. I would have to think that Jake Knapp is pretty solidified. I imagine
Yeah.
it would be hard for him to slip from 42 to out of the field. It would take a pretty disastrous showing by him and some people jumping up. But there are a lot of names there that I'll talk about Nikolai Højgaard in a little bit as somebody I'm keeping my eye on for sure. And like you mentioned, Pearson Coody at 51 is an interesting one. I mean, he doesn't need to make that crazy a move, but I mean, this tournament will matter as much as any to him, obviously, if not more, to find his way into that Masters field. So that is definitely like probably the storyline at this event to watch. Is we have another one that doesn't necessarily have a ton of that top end talent, especially now that Scotty Scheffler's dropped out. But there's good names, and there's a lot of reason for a lot of those names to fight pretty hard at a week like this.
And even if you don't have those big names, we saw last week was case in point of what not having those big names in the field does. Like obviously Matt Fitzpatrick is arguably one of the best golfers on the planet right now, but you had the David Lipsky, you had the Sung J M, you had the Brandt Snedeker,
Brent
people that you
Snedeker.
wouldn't expect to be in contention. And that's something I've said from the beginning is that, with the signature events, you're almost starting to lose that like small tournament feel. And so I think having Scotty Scheffler out of the field, that almost adds. I mean, look, obviously we want to see Scotty Scheffler playing every week. We want to see him playing at his best. But when he's not here, and when there's these smaller events with lesser fields, it doesn't make it any less interesting. And I think these last few weeks, like with Cognizant, with Valspar, that they've both proved that exponentially.
Yeah, and I think another just to keep tooting the horn of the smaller events that we've had recently is this is another cool course. Like it's another interesting course in Memorial Park. It's one of the like weird is kind of the wrong word, but it's a par 70 and it's somehow 7,500 yards, which is outrageous. It's got three par fives and five par threes, which is just cool. But one really cool thing I like about the par threes, and I've got their scorecard pulled up here for this coming week is that they all play at super different distances. The second hole is 167 yards on the card, and obviously this all varies with pin positions and tee boxes and stuff. So, there will be very similarly distanced par threes, but purely on the scorecard, you've got the second hole at 167 yards, seventh hole at 216, ninth hole at 182, 11th hole at 237, and 15th hole at 155. So there's a lot of variation that just lends itself to a little bit more variability. You're not, letting guys get away with hitting 9-iron three times into three different par threes, which happens not often, but not irregularly on tour. And in golf in general, you find yourself hitting the same kind of stock shot. So that's a little weird part of this course, a little fun part of this course. And then it does also have an interesting ending where there's not really much water on the course at all until you get to 16 and 17. And they also, I think it's behind you, Nick. They have their own little stadium par three type of thing that almost reminds me
Oh yeah.
of the 16th at TPC Sawgrass. Obviously, it's not quite as immense and as Coliseum-y as that one is at TPC Sawgrass, but it is, a little stadium hole around another 155-yard par three, very similar. And then the 16th is a long par five where you have carry over the water both on the drive and on the approach if you choose. It's honestly kind of similar to 15 at TPC Sawgrass, just a long par five where if you want to hit that second shot onto the green, it's going to be 270 yards and you're going to have to carry a lot of water and get it there. But it sets up good opportunity for birdie if you can do it. But otherwise, you're laying up and hitting a wedge over some water. And then 17, it doesn't require carry on the tee ball, but does on a dog leg right where the green juts out over the water. So there is some interesting play down the stretch. And, it's another one that when you have these smaller events, it gives you the opportunity to highlight courses like this, I think. And obviously I'm not arguing that this is quite as fascinating as some of the ones we had at, the Cognizant or even, last week with the ending there. But it does apply a little pressure when you've got water and risk everywhere kind of down the stretch there. So it'll be another fun tournament to watch and, it does encourage that close finish again. So hopefully we get another one.
Who are some of the guys talking about this course that you think could play it well?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of speak really broadly first, I mean, you, it really favors driving distance over accuracy. We'll talk a little bit about chasing majors by the NFL Films thing, but you heard Chris Goddard say in there that he can't wait to get to Houston because he can just hit it as far as he wants every single time. It is very different than like the tacticians course that we've seen a couple times recently. It's very much like bomb and gouge kind of, but it does really favor distance over accuracy. And winners also tend to have a really really good strokes gained putting. I think in each of the last 5 years. So this tournament moved to Memorial Park from I believe the Golf Club of Houston. In 2021, technically it was 2020, but it was October of 2020, so it counts as like the 2021 PGA Tour season since they revamped the schedule and everything. But in each of the last 5 years, so there's been five iterations of this tournament at Memorial Park. The winner has been within the top six of strokes gained putting, which one is somewhat obvious because obviously if you're winning, you're doing well pretty much across all strokes gained categories, but still to be within the top six in strokes gained putting is pretty substantial and is definitely an indicator of like those are kind of the things that bring out the best or the winner tends to really shine in those two categories, which brings me to a couple guys where I was looking at driving distance and strokes gained putting. And you mentioned one of the names already is Jake Knapp, who arguably is the best profile for that. He's ninth in driving distance and he's actually first in strokes gained putting. That's like per round this season. And this again, all these ranks are should be mentioned are one only for players in the field and two were I did get these ranks before Scotty Scheffler withdrew. So worth noting that they might be one spot off here or there. But Jake Knapp still top 10 in both driving distance and first in strokes gained putting. He's definitely somebody to watch. And then Sam Burns is probably the other name that really jumps out when you think of really good putters that also have that ability off the tee. So there's a couple others I'll get into, but those are kind of the first names that jumped off the page to me as like guys that are A, playing well, and B, really fit this course in a way that a lot of others don't. Obviously, Minwoo Lee, defending champion, fits this course as well. But those were kind of some of the names that jumped out to me as earliest, I guess.
So the one thing I want to mention is, you had mentioned the course favoring more so distance over accuracy, and I was wondering like what lends to that? Because I know they were talking last week. I know we had mentioned that one of our red flags about Jordan Spieth at the Valspar was driving accuracy, but then they had mentioned on the broadcast that it almost fit his profile because the amount of tee shots required less drivers, which allowed him to take more irons off the tee, which allowed him to be more accurate. So I'm curious, is this one of those where you're have a bit more tighter fairways, which causes you to try to be more accurate, or is it just less penalizing to be in the rough this weekend?
There's a little of everything. I think for one, it's a long course, like we were talking about, right? There's five par threes and it still measures out to 7,500 yards. So even for these guys, there's, what, so there's, in terms of par fours, there's, uh, all four of them play over 400 yards, but three of them play over 500 yards. So obviously with those ones, even for these guys, you're going to be going driver 6 iron into holes like this. Maybe driver 7 iron if you really hit the ball far, or driver 8 iron if you carry whatever it's into a speed slot. But it just requires a little bit more distance off the tee in order to put yourself in good position. But also, I mean, what we've seen in recent weeks, I feel like both last week and at the Players the week before, is really penalizing rough. I think both of the last 2 weeks we've seen some pretty heavy, pretty brutal rough, and I wouldn't expect that this week. I'd have to check the media guide. Usually they put up like rough length in the PGA Tour media guide, which I can check on. But I think that would be my initial indication, is one, that it's just a really long course, and two, that the rough is a little bit less penalizing than it otherwise would be.
Mhm. Well, in that case, if I'm going to throw out some people that I like as well, you'd mentioned already Chris Gotterup is really excited to be here, and he's someone that I'm really excited to watch him be here. He's someone that, obviously we've talked about him in great detail on this podcast, like in terms of just his wins, both at the Sony and in Phoenix. We witnessed his win in Phoenix as well. And so he's someone that he's performed well enough in these big events to where you can consider him to be a legit threat. He's someone that has been sort of in the mix. He's one of the betting favorites this week. Looking at what he's done after Phoenix, he was 37th at Pebble, not great. Cut at the Genesis, that's definitely not great. Tied for 18th at the Arnold Palmer, which I thought was a decent result for him. I think I had mentioned that that's what I was sort of looking to see from him. But then 56th at the Players was not great. Didn't do very well off the tee there. I have his strokes gained pulled up right now. You could tell his approach play actually was pretty decent. And putting, um, I looked, he actually was in his third round, he was fourth in strokes gained putting, gaining 2.6 strokes on the field. And that's when in his third round, that's when he shot a 68 for his best score of the weekend. So you could see there was instances where he was firing up the putter, and definitely someone that, could be counted on. And obviously you couldn't replicate that over 4 rounds. But if you look at his strokes gained in Phoenix in putting, he actually lost strokes putting in Phoenix. And so I think putting is not necessarily what I'm looking for this week. Obviously, around the greens, I would love to see an improvement from the Players, but just that bombing persona. Like in his driving, he's in the 96th percentile of driver distance on Data Golf. He's someone that very clearly just bombs the driver. And so to me, by not just winning the Sony, but also winning Phoenix, you could tell he's someone that does have that pedigree of, he can perform in big events. So I'm more so looking forward to seeing if he can replicate that and use that driver energy. Obviously, you'd mentioned that the rough was not going to be super penalizing. So I definitely think that if the driver can service him well and he could just be somewhat decent on the greens, that he can definitely have a very good weekend.
Yeah. So to confirm, first of all, I did check the media guide and then they didn't have it, but I did look online. And actually, interestingly enough, it used to be a lot more unpredictable because they had Bermuda grass up until 2022, but they've now switched it to 1.25-inch overseeded rye is the rough. So the ball sits up pretty good. So it's a pretty comfortable, that's part of why it makes it a pretty comfortable driving place, because you can kind of get away with some misses more so than you can in a lot of the courses we've seen recently with the, I mean, we saw, what was it at the Players, like 5 to 6 inches it was grown up to.
Yeah.
Obviously, which you don't expect the Texas Children's Houston Open to be up to that standard, but nonetheless, it does encourage that. And I totally agree, Nick. I had the same kind of note that, like, if he can figure out a way to be average on the greens, I think you might have mentioned this exact thing, and I might have missed it while I was looking up the rough, but he's lost strokes putting in Chris Goddard's lost strokes putting in 4 of his 7 starts this season, but has gained strokes in the last two. So it's kind of like, if he's able to stay even moderately hot with the putter, then yeah, he should absolutely be up there. And funnily enough, one guy that jumped out as like one of the guys that really fits the driving distance and strokes gained putting in the field was Sudarshan Yelmarahu, who we saw put up the obscure T5 at the Players the other week. Now, do I think that Sudarshan Yelmarahu is going to put together that same type of performance? No, not really. But it's funny that he's a good fit, and his last start in any professional golf tour was a T5 at the Players Championship. So you
Better
never know.
play.
It's worth knowing that he's kind of one of those guys that if he's actually playing as hot as he was at the Players, then you know what? Sure, why not? I think he gained like 1.5 shots around in putting and was well above average in driver distance. So definitely somebody to watch as well.
I mean,
And then,
the last winners, Minwoo last year at 20 under was like by far over the last 5 years the lowest score. So it doesn't look like it's necessarily a birdie fest, even though it might not be the toughest course in the world. I don't know if that attributes to, some of the weird par threes and just maybe tougher to make putts here. But it's definitely interesting. You look at the odds and it's just a bunch of guys kind of bunched together. There's no real favorite other than Minwoo, and you'd have to suspect that's kind of just because he won last year. But you just got a bunch of guys bunched together, so even Vegas doesn't necessarily know
Yeah,
who's a favorite.
this is an incredibly confusing thing for me. One, Brooks Koepka, by the way, is fifth in odds.
yeah.
Worth shouting out. I mean, you never know. What makes absolutely no sense to me is that Kurt Kitayama is sixth in odds. I don't know where that came from. He doesn't have good course history here. It doesn't really make sense. But I feel like that when I see that, I'm like, well, Vegas clearly knows something. So everybody, Kurt Kitayama will be top five inevitably because otherwise he wouldn't be there. But yeah, I don't know. It's like you said, Kyle, it's a really weird. There's like so many guys that plus 2,700, 3,000, that range. That it's tough to nail anybody down, which is why I think when I was writing down players to watch, there's like seven guys that written down here because I was just like, I don't know all of them. Like all these guys hit the ball far now, so I don't know. All of them are good to watch.
Yeah,
Can
you mentioned Kepka as well, and he's someone that just looking at his data golf, I've actually haven't been checking his data golf profiles. He's someone that he's been top 20 in his last three starts. Gained strokes putting at the Valspar, even though it was a bit shaky. Off the tee was, a bit iffy as well, but that definitely won't penalize him as much this week. I don't know. I feel like he's someone that he's been showing good signs. He's someone that, maybe we could definitely start to count on him in these events. I think he's definitely going to be looking at this and giving this his all because it's right before Augusta. You could tell he's definitely going to be taking this seriously. He's definitely going to want to improve his game as much as possible before the Masters. He's someone that I don't think he's gonna, so like, I personally don't see him winning. But if he did, I would definitely not be surprised. I definitely think he will be in the mix at least. I'm not sure. Um, I know we mentioned in our last episode that, let's see how he does at the Masters, and then we could maybe start, starting to count on him for these events, and maybe we could start predicting him for wins. I feel like this is one more like, not to steal your prove me wrong thing, but like this is one of those like, let's see what you can do, and then maybe we can start counting on him a little bit more. But at the current moment,
You can
I'm
steal
interested
it.
to see.
Yeah, you can
Well,
steal the prove me wrong because I actually don't have one this week, which we'll get to. But I threw a little
I definitely
curveball.
have one then. What?
First I do want to add that Brooks did have a T5 here in 2021, so there is a little bit of history there. He's been
Yeah.
here before, played it twice before he went to live and logged a T5. So
And so if you don't ever prove me wrong, I can just jump right into mine. I
do it.
think as someone who is currently suffering and did not have a good morning looking at the latest fantasy golf scores, what the hell happened to Ben Griffin this year?
I don't know. Where is he?
Like,
What has been going on with him?
he's three consecutive missed cuts. So missed the cut at
Jesus, yeah, I
Valspar
didn't even see.
Players and Arnold Palmer. T41 at the Genesis, 37th at Pebble.
Wow.
Um, his last top 25 came at the Amex at T24. This is someone that, I was very high on coming into this year. He's someone that was within the top 10 of OWGR. I think per Data Golf, he was the best golfer not named John Rahm or Scotty
I
Scheffler.
mean, he won the last event he played before 2026. I mean, given it was FedEx Cup fall, but still won the Worldwide Technology Championship in November, not that long ago, and then just hasn't done anything really.
Right, he had 3 wins in 2025, two runner-up finishes. He was someone that like it was not just like a little flash in the pan. Like he was someone that you definitely thought was going to carry that success over to 2026. But unfortunately, that just even just looking at his strokes gained, there's no like glaring issue. I think it's just one of those cases where he gained 1.5 strokes putting at the players, but then lost 1.8 off the tee. Or at the Valspar, he gained 0.21 off the tee, lost zero point 0.7 on the green. And so it's one of those where the game is just not clicking in all spots consistently for him. And it just seems like he's kind of spiraling at this point, and that's not at all what I expected for him in this year.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about Patrick Cantlay being like out of sight, out of mind last week. I literally had no idea that Ben Griffin hadn't made a cut in like a month. So that's maybe reflects poorly on me as a golf podcaster, but hey, he has been so far like there's my periphery, which is, your periphery, and then he's like behind my head somewhere. I have no idea. Haven't even kept an eye on him. That is crazy that he's missed three in a row and literally has done nothing at the signature events this year, at the signatures or the players or anything really, outside of a
Yeah,
couple top 20 early.
and like it's just fallen completely off a cliff, and there was no warning, there was no just one day wakes up and it's just not performing anymore. And so I think, I don't really think anybody had Ben Griffin on their radar for the majors this year. I don't think that was ever a possibility. But actually, I take that back. He was T10 at the US Open, T8 at the PGA. Um, so okay, I'll rescind that. But at the same time, I don't think he was on anybody's like well, major in this case, but I don't think anybody was like really like, yes, I want Ben Griffin for the Masters. But with that being said, like you would have at least thought like being like starting the year in the top 10 of OWGR, you'd at least think he would be in the conversation. And that's what's confused me the most this year is that, like you mentioned, he's just completely vanished.
Yeah, one second. I'm trying to count. He's second in OWGR, and I mean, in the field, he's second in OWGR, and he is what, like 10th, ninth in this field behind Marco Penge and Michael Thorbjornsen and Nikolai Højgaard in odds to win. I mean, even, and that's probably giving him a little extra grace just because of what he did last year. I mean, there's some guys behind him that I'd pick before him for sure.
Yeah, and I think right now it's driving accuracy that is really and distance too. He's kind of just at that like 50th percentile in both categories right now. Maybe this is a course where accuracy isn't going to kill him as much. Maybe he can just kind of let it loose a little bit more. But I don't know. I can't. Usually when we do our prove me wrongs, we give like a finish that we're expecting to like maybe say like do this, prove me wrong.
Yeah.
I really got nothing for Ben Griffin, honestly. Like I guess make the cut. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the bar is on the floor right now for Ben
yeah,
Griffin.
absolutely. It's
Make
like we're gonna have to start putting him on the back of milk cartons. Like I
makes for a good
I,
prove me wrong guy.
I exactly
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. I'm glad you found him because I was struggling to find anybody. I was like, man, this was for some reason I was having a hard time, so I audible. But before I get to that guy, I do want we shouted out these names, but I want to explain it a little bit. The Jake Knapp and the Sam Burns. Obviously, they're both great course fits. Sam Burns did play here in 2021 and 2022 and was T7 both years, and he's coming off a T13 at the Players. I think he's probably going to be my pick this week. I think just the way he's playing. And the fact that, he's one of those guys that he's one of the best putters in the world and hits the ball pretty far. So, and is in good form. And Jake Knapp's another one that I definitely, if he wasn't coming off his worst start of the year his worst start of the year, sorry, with the missed cut at the Players, I would probably be picking him as well. But even with the bad showing at the Players, I was just looking at it, and it's funny. He actually gained over 3 shots in the field in putting, and was well above average in distance and accuracy off the tee. It was just like his approach play that was gone. So theoretically, that isn't that penal it isn't nearly as penalizing here as it was at TPC Sawgrass. So there's reason to have faith outside of the fact that he's, been one of the best players of 2026 by a long shot. Um, so he's somebody to watch. And also, kind of, you laid this out at the beginning, Kyle, and we both mentioned it that like he he's 42nd in OWGR, so he should be safe. Um, but a decent finish would go a hell of a long way to making that like locked down. And obviously, a win would go even farther to making that locked down and would provide him a little more security. Because, we're thinking about the Masters right now. There is, top 60 for the US Open and top 50 for the Open Championship, which are months away, right? So he still wants to jump up into the top 30, 25. Obviously, the FedEx Cup Championship takes only the top 30 into that final tournament. So there's a lot of reason for him still to be pressing to get that OWGR up. And obviously, none of these guys are going to turn their nose up at a chance to win. So he is somebody to watch this week. But the guy I switched, so I didn't do prove me wrong because I was weak and couldn't think of anybody. And thank you, Nick, for saving me and replacing me in that spot. But I did do a prove me right guy, which
Okay.
is, I don't know. I wanted to just bring up Nikolai Højgaard, and this was the only way I could think of to do it. I know I brought him up last week in our Cinderella's part about guys I think could have a really good year. This feels like the week that I honestly don't have great reason for it other than one, he's a great driver of the ball, so that he has tons of distance off the tee, hits the ball a mile, which helps out here. He's not a great putter. He's gained strokes putting in each of his six PJ Tour starts, but like not a meaningful amount. Particularly, he's like a fine putter. But what really, another like to tie this back to what we were just talking about with Jake Knapp, like what I'm really interested is I want to see him like close the door on this Masters thing. I want him to be in the field. I want him to like get himself a top five, get himself a win, and just because this is also a tournament that he can win. He's like I said, above Ben Griffin by a few spots. He's probably like eighth in the odds. The tournament that he, for all intents and purposes, should be up there. But it really with that OWGR standing at 47th and really 1.5 weeks to kind of get it done here, like this is the week I want to see him kind of step on next and figure out a way to get to that point because there's not a better week to do it, frankly, than this one. So that's why I don't really have great reason beyond that, but I would love to see him kind of. I'm also just riding the high of the Cinderella thing and hoping he proves me right like immediately, which would be sick, and I'd get to put that all over social media, so that would be cool. But I do have some faith that he could step up this week.
hmm And speaking of closing the door on the Masters and trying to qualify, I know we've sort of talked about his status heading into, but what do we think Ricky Fowler is capable of this week?
I don't know. It's a weird, like he's one of the best putters in the world. At least this year, he's been like one of the top few PGA Tour putters on the PGA Tour. He doesn't hit the ball a mile. In fact, I think he was like below average in the last two starts. But that stuff can be kind of wishy-washy, obviously, with like you said, Nick, like hitting less off the tee. Stuff like it can be kind of murky to really piece that together on driver distance. I think on average he hits the ball a little bit above average, probably, just in terms of driving distance. Obviously, was it the players or maybe last week we saw him drive the green on a 345-yard par four, so he's got it in the tank. It's in there. I don't know. You kind of talked about it a little bit. I forget. Maybe it was maybe Brooks you were talking about. Yeah, I think it was Brooks you were mentioning. But it's sort of another guy that I would be comfortable expecting to be in the top 10, but not a lot more than that. Like seeing Ricky actually pulling out a win here is a little difficult for me. I mean, part of that's just the fact that he doesn't hasn't done it and since what 2024.
Yeah,
It's been at
sounds right.
least 2 years. Um, but I don't know. I have faith that he can do something to move his stock up, but to expect a top five and then, to get himself into the Masters is going to be a tall order.
Yeah, I could feasibly see a top five. I personally wouldn't bet on it, but
Yeah,
I could see it happening this
it
week.
could happen.
Well, as we talk about, guys like Ricky and Brooks needing to play well, and you talk about Nikolai Højgaard and Knapp, wanting to solidify themselves. What do you guys think? Is there any, we see this in other sports, whether it's the NFL or baseball, where teams, you're almost better off needing to play your best ball late in the season to be able to make the playoffs. Like you don't want to be a team who clinches early and then coasts because then all of a sudden you get smacked in the face when you get there. It's not exact. It's a little bit apples to oranges in golf because you have so many of the best players in the world who don't necessarily play all these smaller events. But do you guys think there's anything to trying to round yourself into best form and needing to play well in these few events leading up to the majors?
I'm gonna be a bit controversial. I'm gonna say no. I think
Interesting.
I think, I think case in point, look at Rory McIlroy over the years. I feel like maybe this is different for all the other majors, but I feel like Augusta is the great equalizer, and it does not discriminate in who it eats up. And you when you're playing that course, you either have it or you don't, and it's very quick if you do. So like my point in bringing up Rory is over, I think he's been the betting favorite at like the last seven straight Masters or something like that. It's either been him or Scotty, and obviously he won it last year. But there was a lot of years where he was the betting favorite and was either grinding to make the cut or missed it altogether. And so I think that you can either take that hot play and it can give you confidence heading into Augusta, but I think it could also destroy your confidence too. And I think you could also be expected to compete, but I think you could also have that pressure and could just as easily crumble as Rory has done over the years. So I think, yes, I'm very heavily, like, I had mentioned last episode, like Matt Fitzpatrick is someone that I have my eye on at Augusta. But, because obviously he's been one of the hottest golfers in the last like 4 weeks. But at the same time, like I definitely think there is something to be said of the Masters specifically lends itself to players that know how to win the Masters. And so, regardless, I think of who's playing well at that point, it's always going to lend itself to like maybe 10 people.
Yeah, I think I'll disagree to a certain extent. I think sorry, I have like seven different things that I was going to try to respond to. First, I think the difference, I think the one thing to take into account with Rory is also the added mental aspect of trying to win a career Grand Slam. I think that carries a
That
lot
is
of weight
true,
when you're
yeah.
at events like that, especially when you're talking about the Masters specifically. Obviously, he had a lot of other opportunities. You can talk about the U.S. Open with Bryson at Pinehurst the other year. So there have been other opportunities for Rory and guys like that. I think um, I feel like it certainly helps in some cases, and it certainly helps with mentality. Like, I don't know that it actually lends to better results to be playing hot, like to have won, once the year, like once already in the year before you play the Masters or the U.S. Open or whatever. I don't know if you would find any like actual correlation there, but I do think that to find peace of mind going into those, like obviously, if you're playing at your best, you're going to just feel more comfortable going into those events. Um, but I will also say, like, we talked about this, I think it was last episode, just about kind of just to use Wyndham Clark and JJ Spawn as an example again, like the majors they won, the US Opens, and obviously we can talk about those as a little bit fluky, but those seasons, specifically what Wyndham Clark's, especially even more than JJ Spawn's, he had won already that year, and he performed well for a little while afterwards, and he was certainly riding a hot hand when he won that, potentially fraudulent US Open at LACC. And JJ Spawn, to a lesser extent, obviously had that second place finish at the Players about a month before, or no, I guess about 2 months before his U.S. Open win. He was not nearly as consistently hot as Wyndham Clark had been in the tournaments leading up to his win, but nonetheless, I think but you could find 40 examples on each side of guys, and to use Scotty as an example, like when he won his first Masters, we were like, holy shit, this guy's riding the hottest hand of all time. And then it just turned out that he rode that for 4 years. And then he just happens like that he's the best golfer since Tiger Woods. So all this stuff takes time to come to fruition and everything, but generally, I would say to me, I think it does matter, especially from a viewer's perspective. And this is not the way that we're supposed to be thinking of things, but like Nick was saying, like thinking about when you're thinking about who I think might win, it's like obviously I'm not good. Like I was just talking about with Jake Knapp, I'm hesitant to pick him because of the bad week he's coming off of. Literally, if he just hadn't played last week, if he, or sorry, I guess the players, not last week. If he hadn't missed the cut at the players, hadn't played at all, I'd be a lot more encouraged to play him, even though nothing theoretically would have changed in his play. But that's a really long-winded way to say. I think in most cases it does matter, especially for mentality. In terms of actual results, I'm not sure it plays as much of a result as you would argue that it probably doesn't. Like for example, the MLB, where obviously, like if you just weight your good performances towards September, like you're golden. That's all kind of all you need to find your way into the playoffs and be playing hot come September.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
absolutely.
it's just an interesting conversation, I think. And you know, that's kind of golf is tricky like that. And I think you're totally right, Nick, about the Masters being its own beast. And you know, I don't know about guys like this necessarily winning, but you know, you kind of see some maybe an interesting guy leading after a Thursday or a Friday, or guys kind of up towards the leaderboard that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And you know, sometimes it's just because guys are playing well.
Mm. Like
Okay.
you never can count out Jordan Spieth at Augusta. Like
Yeah, but
you
I
can
think
always count on like a sneaky top five. Like
Jeez.
regardless of what form he's in, he's in. And that's exactly, you know, a player like Jordan Spieth is exactly the type of player that I'm trying to say in an example like
Yeah,
this is that
totally.
it does
yeah,
not matter what form he's in at any point in the year, you can always count on him for a top 10 at Augusta.
yeah. I'm trying to think of like purely at the Masters who's been somebody that was just purely riding a hot hand and won. I mean, there have been weird winners like Danny Willett, but that was more like he lucked into that. He wasn't riding a hot hand. That was like the tournament was handed to him. Um,
Okay, let's not go
I know,
there.
I'm sorry, but hey, but Jordan Spieth won in 2015, so it's okay. But like, do you just really don't see it at the Masters? I'm just trying to look through the past winners. I mean,
Maybe Hideki?
anybody who's Hideki, but he was a well enough established golfer, and was he really riding? Like, let me give me 2 seconds to look at his 2021. He wasn't really doing it. He was T30 at the Valero the week before, missed the cut at the Players. Like, he wasn't riding a hot hand. That was his only win of 2021. So I that's a yeah. We're going too in depth in this now, but it is a really good conversation, Kyle, and I could probably go on about it for a really long time, but generally probably doesn't actually lend to anything different in terms of results, but it helps my mentality and hopefully it helps the player's mentality. It would help mine if I was a player.
Yeah, I mean it'll be something to think about as we get towards the Masters, and like it'll be fun to follow after Thursday and Friday to see, oh, are any of these guys who we kind of talked about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, you know, playing better here than we might have expected. Okay, anything else on the Houston Children's Open?
We talked a lot about a lot of guys, so just to cover my bases so that I can clip this later. Michael Thorbjornsen, I don't know what's going on with him, but he theoretically fits the form. And actually, the other Højgaard twin is kind of like one of the best course fits out here, Rasmus, even though he hasn't played particularly well, but 18th in driving distance, third in strokes gained putting. So, they need to offer like a one of the Højgaards bet because it is so difficult to bet one without the other because they're also like very similar golfers. So it's just like anytime I'm reasoning that one might play well, I'm like, well, the other one, they should do like give me a little bit of a boost on betting that just like one of the Højgaards will top five.
Nick?
Yeah, no, I could definitely get on the Højgaards like that. I definitely think yeah, like I said, I know we definitely have outlined a lot of different definitely outlined a lot of different players. We've certainly covered our bases to go back later, but yeah, I'm excited for a good week of golf. You know, it's definitely this is officially crunch time for a lot of these players that are looking
Yeah.
to qualify for the Masters. And so obviously a tournament is a tournament and these players are obviously going to give their all every week, but like you're really going to see this week people are going to try to give it every little ounce that they have to try and make it to Augusta. So I think we can circle back on Sunday, but I definitely think we're in for a very good finish this week.
I think it could be similar to the Cognizant when I correctly predicted Nico Echeverria would win. And that tournament, it was kind of similar to this, where it's like, God, everybody's kind of bunched together up. Let me pick someone who's got like 4,000 odds or worse, because it's going to be someone random. And you know who's sitting there at plus 4,000 who catches my eye,
You mean other than Rasmus Højgaard?
other than Rasmus Højgaard? Shane Lowry.
Ooh,
Oh,
yeah. it's one of those that like in theory it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it also makes total sense. Like he's just one of the he's probably
He's
he's just
just a good
top five
golfer.
golfer in this field. Like
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking he's that far down the odds board, honestly. Maybe because of the collapse he had earlier this year. But I mean, he had the collapse, which means he was playing good golf up until that point.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think it's just the driver distance and putting probably, but I just, like to be that low like is kind of crazy. That he's behind guys like Harry Hall feels a little
Yeah,
excessive.
I just have to ask, like, are you really feeling Shane Lowry, or are you just looking for an excuse to mention that you got to pick right once?
yeah, a little bit of both. Oh, I'll be
Yeah,
shoehorning
you
that
can
into any conversation
Put it
you
all
on
the
a
can
time.
carry that
t-shirt.
torch.
Uh,
Yeah, we have no argument against that until one of us wins anything, so
yeah.
it's okay.
If I pass anybody on the street wearing a Columbia shirt or an Arkansas shirt, I'll go, "Hey, do you know Nico Echeverria? Are you a fan?" I picked him to win, and I was right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you guys want to talk a little chasing Sunday here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, why not? We'll do it
So
fairly
you kind of
quick.
mentioned the Goddard up, um, alluding to his looking forward to playing at this tournament. And people I think have seen clips on Twitter. You saw one between Scotty and who was it? Was it Tom
It
Kim
was no, it was
or
Siwoo, which
Siwoo?
yikes. It
Siwoo.
was Siwoo.
And it's just like cool behind the
Yeah.
scenes stuff. And what do you guys make of that?
Oh, I think first of all, it is funny that both Siwoo and Tom Kim live in Dallas and are really good friends with Scotty Scheffler. I think that is a little bit amusing. Um, it was awesome, man. It sucks that it's or not sucks. It is so funny to me that this is a production by NFL Films. Like we couldn't nobody else, like we had to call in an outside service from another sports league. When it's just like it points to I don't know. First of all, I want to give the PJ Tour and everybody involved in this production credit because it was awesome. It was obviously the first time golfers have been mic'd up for a full tournament round. That's never happened before. So shout out to NFL Films, shout out to all parties involved for getting this done. It was really cool. Awesome to hear the conversations between Akshay Bhatia and Joe Griner. Awesome to hear the conversations between guys like Siwoo and his caddy, like see those relationships. Chris Gotterup, obviously, going through a frustrating round, not playing to the level that he wanted to. You're kind of seeing like all the levels of professional golf. Um, my one gripe is just like it's 2026 and this is the first time we're doing this and we had to get NFL Films involved to mic up these players and make it work. And shout out to them because they turned it around in what, like 2 days, which is
Yeah, no, it was
outrageous.
very quick.
It came out like the Tuesday following the end of the players. Um, and I think the tough thing with these things that I hope they continue to do them to whatever extent they can without overworking the staff. But I can't wait until they do one of these and they, have a guy in the final group on Sunday or they're able to, maneuver it so that as time goes on, like over the weekend, they'll mic up somebody new or something that's in contention just because it was really cool to hear the conversations and I can't imagine what it would have been like to have, Cam Young and Matt Fitzpatrick mic'd up, going down the stretch, hearing those conversations on Sunday would have been awesome at the players. But all in all, I mean, a really cool production and a really like easy way to kind of get some more personality out of these guys because I think personality is something that golf struggles with so much. Just like making it more than just guys hitting little round white golf balls. And part of that's the tour, part of that's just how guarded some of these guys are. But shout out to who is what Siwoo, Chris Gotterup, Akshay, and Ricky for taking the plunge and getting mic'd up. And I think also this is the end of my rant, I promise. But I think a lot of the hesitancy comes from, there've been a lot of unfortunate mic that like moments, like hot mic moments on Tour golf courses. Shout out guys like Justin Thomas and stuff like that, where some really unfortunate things have been said on the golf course, and guys are really hesitant to like be mic'd up and have anything catch on air. So it's good to see some guys take the plunge and really show that this can be done in a tasteful and interesting way, and it's not going to tarnish reputations. First of all, you just shouldn't be saying stuff that would tarnish your reputation. Let's put that out there. But also, at the same time, just that trust factor is important, and hopefully over time. NFL Films, whoever continues creating these types of products can build that trust factor and make it more consistent and get more
Yeah,
guys on board.
and I think the best part about this content is that it's behind the scenes. And I think that's what's something that it almost like peels back the curtain of like seeing the actual life of a P or not life, but like to see like the inside of a round of a golfer. And that's what's made, we saw the success of Drive to Survive on Netflix and what it did to Formula One. And we've seen almost every sports league try to come back and partner with Netflix and try to recapture some of that energy. And I think, something I've said over the years, so I'm a big Formula One fan. I have not even watched the latest season of Drive to Survive, and I will not be doing it. Just because I feel that in the first few seasons, it was really interesting to see, like, they would have the camera behind the wall, and like, you would get those behind the scenes encounters that, a lot of people didn't even realize the camera was there. Whereas in the latest seasons now, it almost just feels like, okay, we're gonna unveil this great thing that nobody knows about. We have this real, oh my God, Netflix is here? Like, it's how convenient. Like, it's almost like there's a bunch of scripted moments, and it just overall ruined the product. And so I don't think it's as authentic as it used to be. I personally I love Full Swing. I think it's been very good for the sport. It's been nice to kind of pull back the curtain and see these players' perspectives, but I definitely think it could use a bit more of like behind the scenes non-scripted energy. And I think this is the perfect bridge gap to that. I think you're gonna get players at their most raw. You're gonna get them in their competition, and you're gonna like. I think I was explaining the whole concept to my parents last night at the dinner table, and I said, I would kill to be in the mind of Jordan Spieth during a round and just seeing how his head works. And if he's mic'd up for a round and you get a glimpse of that, I think that's someone that we've given our praise to. Brian Rolap is a god amongst men with how he's revolutionized the PGA Tour over the last 4 months, even. And, just going back to what he said earlier, where if you do what the fans want, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be correct. And this is, to me, I think this is just prime. Look at the reception of this production. I think it's just a prime example of that.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. It's you talk about full swing and it's different from full swing because it's like it's immediately after rounds, right? It's immediately after a tournament, which is cool. And and it's by NFL Films. NFL Films is one of the most renowned media companies, that there is that does some of the best work that's ever been done going back years and years and years. And so to have that production value, I think carries weight. But I also was interested to see how this was going to look because, golf is different from football. In football, you see plays being called or whatever, but you can't be kind of inside the play. You just can't do that. Where golf, you already have such great access. I think people are surprised when you kind of get that drone shot above after a guy hits a shot and see, the cameraman's 10 feet behind Colin Morikawa at Pebble right there, like laying on the
Hmm.
fairway. Like you can already hear a bunch of those conversations. So I was like, I don't know how much more this is going to
Yeah,
be because you already get so much of that inside stuff just on the broadcast. His caddy or Berger and his caddy, when they were both going up to 18 a few weeks ago, like you already get some of those great conversations where like for NFL
yeah.
films in an NFL game, you don't get that until after the fact of the game kind of thing. But they did a great job with it and it is kind of useful and it is gives you more info than you would normally get on a broadcast.
Yeah, I think the two things to respond to both of you. I think first of all, I think Full Swing does like a Full Swing and Drive to Survive do a totally different thing than what this is supposed to do, which is great. And they both
Yeah.
serve their great purpose, right? Like Full Swing is to attract, especially when it came out and what it was probably the first one was what 2021, 2020, like mid-COVID.
23, it was
20 was it 23 the first time?
for
Wow.
full swing,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, either way, to it's more to recruit like people to become golf fans.
Right.
It's not like similar to what you're saying, Nick. Like you're a Formula One fan, you're not going to watch Drive to Survive now. Like, and maybe you did at the start. I also think it's funny. It's just it reminded me of I don't know if you guys have watched The Office all the way through, but at the end when they when they are kind of like the production starts coming out, like
Oh yeah,
the documentary
terrible.
starts coming out, and they're all like realizing how much the camera got.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That made me think of Nick, the guy who used to work for Haas, as a Gunter, who
Oh
would
my
just,
gosh, yeah.
say outlandish stuff and then like that, and then you'd be like, oh my God. But that's all that made me think of. But I also think I'm curious to see how this evolves because to me it was really cool to watch. I love hearing the caddy conversations. You're right, Kyle. We do honestly hear more of them than we kind of even really talk about. That was a great example, like the Daniel Berger and his caddy and Akshay conversations during when they were coming down the stretch. But I'm curious because to me, watching it was really cool, but it was also it felt like a lot of snippets. I'm curious to see how they kind of evolve this and kind of bring it into a broader story. And I think a lot of that does come with guys being like in the hunt and being more of a fast in the tournament. Because just watching this to me, it was really cool, but it did feel a lot of like they're like, and now it's Saturday and Akshay is doing this, and then you hear like a couple snippets of their conversations and Joe Griner encouraging him and it was cool that it ended up with Akshay playing with Chris Goddard up on was it Saturday or Sunday? I forget which one, maybe Sunday. Um, so there was a lot of really awesome things that they did, and a lot of things that we have not seen in golf that honestly are not that hard to put together. Obviously, they can't do this every week, but for things like major championships, I feel like this is something that should be on the table if they're able to get guys to do it. But I am curious to see how they kind of develop this into more of a story moving forward and how they kind of refine the product, just because it was a little scattered. But I think that's also sort of the nature of golf, like you're talking about. It's like 4 hours of raw, just mic audio of each of these guys. It's tough. It's gonna be tough to like really piece
I mean,
together a strong story.
and what's tougher about golf is, you got to pick a guy, but there's no guaranteeing they're going to be in
Yeah.
contention or play an interesting round. In full swing, it was, you're kind of like building up. I feel like they tried to do that to build up golf characters. So people who wouldn't
Hmm.
ordinarily watch or aren't interested in golf might be interested in the person.
Like Joel
Where
Damon became a fan favorite through that, like that kind of
Right.
thing.
exactly, exactly. So you just want, is it going to take these tournaments being great, coming down stretches, and them picking the right guys to be mic'd up, or it's interesting, or is it just going to be for kind of the inside baseball crowd of people
Yeah.
who just love golf? But on YouTube, it has done pretty good numbies.
Good numbies out on YouTube.
Yeah,
That's all that
All
matters.
right.
It's all about those
Yeah.
clicks.
that's all they
That's
care
it. It's all
about.
about views. It honestly is all, all about views.
I mean, if it
Uh,
does well, they're going to keep making it. That's,
Yeah.
yep.
That's
Yes.
that's just good
I
business.
think I think the response it's gotten, there's no way they don't find a way to piece a couple more of these together at some point during the year. I don't know when they
For
try to
sure.
target it. I don't know if it's tougher to do it at major tournaments because guys are going to be more focused. Um, it was cool. The last thing I'll say about it, it was cool just to see the process of getting them mic'd up, seeing them like weave it into the close. It does seem like something that you could pretty easily forget that you're mic'd up.
that's
Um,
very inside baseball.
well, I'm just saying, like, the way they did it in the beginning of the thing, they show it like
Yeah,
sewn into the back of the shirt and like
yeah.
strapping the mic through here or whatever, like sewn into the collar, I think the mic was. So it is very much like, I don't know. It seems like something they could forget about and it shouldn't be that much of a stretch because I feel like that would be a big hesitancy is like,
Oh, definitely.
man, I don't want to do it because I'm just going to be thinking about the fact that I'm mic'd up the entire time and I'd rather
Yeah,
just play the Masters and not have this extra thing on my mind. So,
yeah.
uh, yeah, I
It
think
is
I think
cool.
that's plenty on that, but it was really cool. Long
Yeah,
story short,
just Tybo on it. It's got 610,000 views right now.
it's
And I
pretty
think it
good.
was posted last Tuesday. So, it's,
Hmm.
it's pretty good. So we'll see. We'll just, be following that and it'll be cool to see that as we go. For the Masters or something, majors, it'll
Yeah.
be even cooler, I'm sure. Okay,
Hmm.
other tournaments this week. We got DP World Tour in India, LPGA World Tour is in Phoenix, and Corn Ferry is in Savannah, Georgia. You guys want to run through those real quick?
Yeah, we've ran long on just about everything else today, so I'll be really quick. LPGA Tour, Hyoju Kim is defending her title. We kind of talked about that on Monday. Really dramatic win last year, coming from four shots down at this event, the Ford Championship, and Nelly Korda won the event in 2024. So the battle that we saw last week between Nelly and Hyoju is maybe going to be relived this week. To kind of tie that into the Corn Ferry Tour, which is the Club Card Championship. The Golf Channel is going to be a very busy place this week. This is one of 10 Corn Ferry events that are broadcast live on television on Golf Channel. So you've got obviously the PGA Tour will have some feature on Golf Channel as well, but Thursday and Friday for the Corn Ferry Tour, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Is Corn Ferry Tour on, and then it will be LPGA Tour from 6 to 7 or from 7 to 9 p.m. So it's kind of jumping all over the place. And the same as over the weekend, the Corn Ferry Tour gets a 2 hour slot in the afternoon, and the LPGA gets the evening slot. The Corn Ferry Tour, like we said, Club Car Championship out in Savannah, Georgia. Blaze Brown is back. We're not quite at the point where it's really worth talking about the top 20 guys on the Corn Ferry Tour getting their tour cards. We are only what I think there's 25 events on the Corn Ferry Tour, and we are eight in or something like that. So we got plenty of time to get to all of that stuff. The only guy I will shout out is that Ian Holt has two victories on the Corn Ferry Tour in his six starts this year. One more gives him an automatic promotion to the PGA Tour. They have that 3-win automatic promotion. So worth monitoring if he's kind of up near the top of the leaderboard. He could be somebody we see on the PGA Tour fairly soon. But otherwise, that's about it.
Cool. Okay. Well, we will be back with you on Monday, recapping everything that happened over the weekend, and then, of course, previewing the Valero Texas Open, and then giving some early Masters thoughts. We're going to put out our official picks on our Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, so look out for that. Our Twitter is at Center Cup Pod, Instagram and TikTok at centercup.pod, and you can always email us at centercup.pod@yahoo.com. Any final words, boys?
Tiger Woods tees off in 9 minutes.
Yes.
At the time of this recording, it is currently Tuesday. By the time this video is released, we will have a reaction to Tiger Woods' TGL 2026 debut. So go ahead and check that out if
Yeah.
you want to see what you missed. Let's go.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
future for us, but it's the past for anybody listening. So go check that episode out and see how Tiger did. See
All trippy
how
here.
Nick and maybe me or Kyle can yap through Tiger's first couple. I don't know if just as a very, I guess, preview post view notice before, but did you guys see Tiger's couple swings in the
Oh yeah.
in like the warm up they did? They had he was hitting driver on the stinger hole. It looked incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's just because he's trying to hit a driver that goes 2 feet off the ground and not a
Yeah.
broader theme. But yeah, you'll tune into Nick. I'm sure he'll have lots of opinions to go through. Maybe Kyle and I will be able to hop on. We'll see. But tune
Yeah,
in.
that's
It'll be
much
worth it.
must-watch TV 8 minutes from now. So we're gonna get to that.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We will catch you next time.